Thank you, Assemblymember Petrie Norris, for exploring how you think about the shared priority of increasing equity and economic mobility. Now we're going to deep dive into a single piece of legislation, Assembly Bill 2019, authored by Assemblymember Petrie Norris and Assemblymember Holden, and signed by Governor Newsom at the end of September 2022. It really exemplifies how the state can use policy to drive social change, in this case, increasing economic mobility. To explore this, I'm going to be talking with Angela Schell, Chief Procurement Officer and Deputy Director of the Procurement Division for the California Department of General Services. This new law gives our offices, CalOSBA and the Department of General Services, distinct and complementary roles in implementing Assembly Bill 2019 this year. And before we jump in, I'm going to give a very high-level description of its objectives and requirements. First, this is an expansion of existing policy. Current law requires that every state agency that significantly regulates or impacts small business has to designate at least one person to serve as a small business liaison for the agency. These small business liaisons are responsible for receiving and responding to complaints from small businesses and assisting in helping its office meet or exceed the goal of 25% small business participation. Assembly Bill 2019 first requires that each of those small business liaisons develop an economic equity first action plan for the office, department, or agency that they represent. These action plans are intended to provide direction, recommendations, and strategies as to how to ensure that small businesses, including enterprises owned by women, minorities, and members of the LGBTQ community, are effectively involved and can benefit from that agency's procurement process. This bill is going to expand the reporting that my office is already required to do about small business liaisons, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let me introduce Angela Schell, the brave person responsible for overseeing procurement in California, a massive logistical operation. The legislation means that we are partnered together to open the door even wider for small businesses across the state to contracting opportunities. I am so excited about that. And before we talk about this expansion, let's talk about understanding the importance of this policy. And if you could describe for our audience the sheer scale at which the state procurement market is in California. You know, how many dollars does the state itself put into the economy every year? And help us understand the state's participation goals for small businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises. Let's start there.
First of all, thank you, Tara, for having us here today. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. So the state spends approximately $8 to $10 billion a year in goods and services. And there have been years in the past when it's been higher than that, it's been lower than that, and it was quite a bit higher than that during emergency response times. But our core is around $8 to $10 billion each year. And those dollars are available for small business and disabled veteran business enterprise participation. So that's a lot of dollars out there for opportunity. And with respect to our programs, we do have, as you mentioned earlier, the state's 25% small business participation requirement. It's now a requirement due to this piece of legislation, AB 2019. as well as a 3% disabled veteran business enterprise program across state contracting dollars annually every year. So departments are required to spend each year in those two programs. And there are some contracting programs within those two socioeconomic programs that departments are able to use to meet those two goals. For example, there is the 5% preference program if you are a small business and you can get 5% knocked off your bid to the state of California to make you more competitive. There is also a DVBE incentive program for those vendors that commit to using between 1% and 5% participation for disabled veteran business enterprises. And then the third item is the small business DVBE option contracting method, where state departments can award contracts directly to SBs or DVBEs by getting a minimum of 2 quotes, not a maximum, but a minimum of 2 quotes from these vendors, and using best value to award contracts up to $250,000 or $388,000 for public works.
Wow.
Significant.
Wow, significant.
Yes.
And thank you for that understanding, because I always thought that DVBE was a preference. So thank you for explaining that. It's really an incentive program.
Yes.
Awesome. So Assembly Bill 2019 really makes a connection between that big contracting machine that you just described and economic equity. And that's the phrase that's used in the legislation. So I'm going to read here briefly from the text of the statute. Quote, small businesses not only contribute significantly to the tax base of the state of California, but also account for approximately 7 million employees, or 48.8% of all employment in the state. It's therefore incumbent upon the state of California to ensure that a fair share of procurement spending be directed and dedicated to small and underserved owned businesses. So let's explore how those two things really go together: the procurement process and economic equity.
So departments have a lot of tools that are already in effect today and can be enhanced through AB 2019 and prior legislation that was passed in the prior year regarding the use of small businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises. And many of those tools are things that are outreach. So outreach can be used to really hone in on identifying those small businesses, disabled veteran business enterprises, as well as those vendors that are in the state of California that may not be certified but have the opportunity to be certified. So our women, our minority-owned, and our LGBTQ businesses can get certified if they meet the requirements. And so state departments have the ability to do targeted outreach with women and minority organizations. They have the ability to post their solicitations out on our Cali Procure system for the state of California in ways that they haven't done in the past. For example, the small business option can be posted on Cali Procure so that a host of vendors that maybe weren't looking for those solicitations in the past can now see them in the Cali Procure system, in our transparency system. There are other things like reducing the requirements in our contracts so that small businesses, DVBEs, women and minority and LGBTQ businesses can compete in ways that maybe they didn't realize they could in the past. Examples could be experience requirements. Maybe if we have, large-scale businesses that compete, maybe the insurance requirements or the experience requirements are at a level that would be commensurate with a large business. But the state has the ability to reduce some of those requirements in an effort to open up that bidding pool and allow other businesses to compete for contracts.
Awesome. That sounds like there is a lot of room to be very intentional about working with small businesses. It's about how we set the table And if we consciously look at procurement with the small business in mind, there's tremendous opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. State departments can engage in education and training of small businesses and DVBEs that are already certified, work with minority, women-owned, and LGBTQ-owned businesses that they come across through their targeted outreach to make sure that they have a better understanding of how the state contracts and how specifically they can contract with each one of our departments. Because departments do have different types of contracts. They have different procurement methods that they may use that are specific to what they're contracting for. And then also, as state departments come across these businesses, refer them to DGS so that we can step in and help get these businesses certified.
Wonderful. Outreach. Getting the word out so folks can't say, I didn't know.
Yes.
So let's talk about the part where we get to work together. AB 2019 expands the role of my office in this process. It requires us to provide additional reporting about how the state is supporting procurement participation by small businesses, micro businesses, disabled veteran businesses, businesses owned by women, minorities, or members of the LGBT community. We're also going to get to gather information about the action plans and policies by state agency liaisons and advocates. Gosh, so many folks involved in this. So let's brainstorm real quick. How are we going to work together on this? What are you looking forward to?
So, I think for our two organizations working together to make sure that we are connecting with those liaisons, with the state departments, that we're connecting with the advocates that are in each one of those state departments. DGS works with those advocates on a regular basis to make sure that they're trained on procurement processes, on outreach processes, on education training, all of those things that are so critical for small businesses to be able to compete. And I think those are the ways that we can step in and help those entities, those state departments, those staff be the experts, be the front line when a small business comes to a department and they need help. They need help understanding the process because, unfortunately, I can say this as the Chief Procurement Officer for the state, procurement is not easy. We can find ways to make it easier, but I will never be able to tell you it is easy. So I think we need to work together, and I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to do this. We need to work together to be able to help our departments be able to do what they need to do to reach that 25% and that 3%.
Yes, and I started laughing there because I always tell small businesses, state procurement is not for the faint at heart. So you got it exactly right. It is not easy. I also say it's a business decision, right? You have to really understand what you are getting yourself into and the complexities and the nuances, and you've got to study your customer. You've got to understand what they buy, how they buy, what their buying cycles are, all of the things that go into that. So to your point, procurement is not easy, but this is an opportunity for us to just swing that door so wide open. And I am excited about this opportunity to work with you. I'm excited about us getting these equity action plans done and, for us to just really kind of be able to lock arms and really help the small businesses that are pursuing their dreams here in the state of California. So
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, right on. Assembly Bill 2019 also calls for another really big project, which is totally new, a big thing, additive to everything that you've just described, Angela. It funds a statewide procurement and contracting disparity study and requires DGS to post the report on or before January 1st, 2025, which will be here before we know it. Tell us, what is a disparity study and how does it help the government move closer to the governor's vision?
So a disparity study is really intended to evaluate the landscape of our current contracting operations. So that study will look at who's actually getting contracts with the state of California today, who isn't getting contracts with the state of California today, and why aren't they getting those contracts? So it gives us an opportunity to talk to businesses about their challenges. Why aren't you getting contracts with the state? If you're not even trying, why aren't you trying to get contracts with the state? And it gives us an opportunity, once the study is complete and recommendations are made, to put practices in place that were recommendations from the feedback that they got from talking to these businesses. So it isn't just, making up something and saying, well, we're going to implement this. It's really founded on the feedback that we get and the real challenges that businesses are experiencing. And we're able to take a look at those and put some practices in place. And what those practices should be intended to do is to increase participation for the entirety of the vendor pool, especially including our women, our minority, LGBTQ, and our certified firms as well, because we know that we have a significant number of certified firms today, and they're not all getting state contracts. So the intent of that disparity study is really to give us an in-depth insight into what's happening and how, if there is any discrimination or really an inference of discrimination, how can we remedy that going forward?
It's a significant piece of AB 2019. It says to me that we get to gather the data that paints the real picture of what's going on. We're not going on stories, my cousin did this, my uncle did that. We'll have real hard data that shows the number of contracts that are going to the various different types of folks that you just got done describing. That seems like that's going to be one heck of a tool.
Yeah.
And in a diverse state like California, we should see some very interesting results.
Yeah, we are very excited about, engaging in this and seeing the results of the study.
I think one of the fundamental misunderstandings in this particular domain of state policy is the relationship between participation goals and the ban on affirmative action that was passed through Proposition 209 and is now a part of the California Constitution. And I get questions about that all of the time. Now this constitutional language says that the state can't grant preferential treatment on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, and public contracting. But Assembly Bill 2019 talks about increasing participation by small businesses, micro businesses, disabled veteran business enterprises, and businesses owned by women, minorities, or members of the LGBT community, and more. Walk us through this, Angela. This is where we need your expertise. How do these two legal mandates go together?
So AB 2019 really gives the state that opportunity to dive into that focused outreach. It calls out the women and minority-owned businesses, are disadvantaged business enterprises. That's the federal program that the Department of Transportation administers. It really gives us the ability to focus our outreach to those businesses in ways that perhaps we haven't done in the past. It gives us the opportunity to, again, make sure that we're doing training with these businesses to make sure that they're getting the education they need to even get their foot in the door, right? Certification. One of the ways that the bill touched on, helping these businesses is requiring DGS to work with DOT to offer that state small business certification to our disadvantaged business enterprise in the state of California. because they are two different programs. And so I think there may be some confusion that if you're certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise, which is again, women and minority-owned businesses, that you're automatically certified as a California certified small business. That is not actually correct because they're based on two different programs, a federal program for the disadvantaged business enterprises and a state program for our certified businesses in California. And so the bill directs us to work with those disadvantaged business enterprises to also get certified as small businesses. And we believe that many of them have that ability. And so we will be working with DOT in a partnership to make that happen. And so I think really all of those things with state departments doing that outreach, doing that education, reducing those requirements or modifying those requirements in solicitations so that businesses can compete in a more equitable way. One of the things that I think we want to be clear about is that Prop 209 hasn't gone away. Our constitutional requirement is still there. And as of today, even with the passing of AB 2019, the state does not have the ability to set individual contract goals for women and minority-owned businesses. But what we absolutely can do is look at increasing our participation of our small businesses and our DVBEs and our DBEs within the certification programs that we have, which means we are increasing business opportunities for women and minority-owned businesses.
Wow, Angela, that's a great point. And thank you for really underscoring that. While we celebrate the victory of AB 2019, we've got to remember it does not wipe out Proposition 209. That's really what I'm hearing you say, is we've got lots to celebrate over here, and the door is opening wider for the businesses that you've described here, but we still have a little bit of work to do over there. So we won't be throwing out solicitations that say minority and women only, right? We still will not be putting protected language like that or doing any type of race-based contracting. So what I'm hearing is that the integrity of the procurement system, the way that it has always been, will still be intact, right, and compliant with the Constitution, but we have an opportunity here to really outreach, engage, change language in contracts to be more inclusive, to provide opportunity. So it kind of sounds like for those in the contracting world, we're getting the best of both worlds.
That's absolutely the goal, is that we get more businesses in, we get more opportunity for them, and they start getting contracts.
So let's think out in the future. 2 years from now, a successful implementation of AB 2019 is well underway. How have we changed this picture of equity and economic mobility in California? What will be different for small businesses, in your opinion?
I think 2 years from now, we're going to have some big successes in terms of we'll have a disparity study that will have some program recommendations for us. We will have some training that we have rolled out to our small businesses, our DVBEs, our women and minority-owned vendors across the state that gets them on the path for success, for competing. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win every contract every time or even the first time. But hopefully what it means is that when we look back 2 years from now, we start to look at our numbers, our data that we're collecting now in the CalOSBA system, where vendors can go in and they can voluntarily self-identify the ownership of their business. And we're able to pull that data out and look at the increases that have happened as a result of the outreach, the education and training, the solicitation requirements, and all of these things wrapped up so that, my goal would be to hear from the small businesses about the successes that they've encountered as a result of this. I want to be able to blast that information out. I want to be able to show the state of California these businesses, got contracts as a result of what happened with AB 2019 and all of the partnerships that we had, both with our departments, with our community partners, with our vendors, with all the state departments, to be able to show people are getting contracts. The good news is out there, and we are seeing economic vitality in our communities as a result of that $8 to $10 billion worth of spend that's available every year.
Impressive. I mean, that's the word that comes to mind. Impressive. I cannot wait to see the outcomes and the impacts generated by this.
Yeah, super excited.
Yes.
I'd love to have this conversation 2 years from now. Okay, let's
Deal.
talk about what happened.
Deal.
Yes.
You're on. So, Angela, I just really want to thank you so much for giving up your time today and doing this with us. It is so incredible, the work that your office is doing. And I just greatly appreciate your commitment to seeing this incredible policy through. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. DGS is so happy to be able to participate in this and in future opportunities. And we are so excited to see how all of these things that we are putting in place is going to help our small businesses in the state of California. So thank you.
Right on. So there you heard it, ladies and gentlemen, from the big dog, the woman who runs the procurement operation for the state of California, and the commitment to the governor's vision of a California for all. This is Tara Lynn Gray, Director of CalOSBA, reminding you that supporting small strengthens us all.